The call within, when we forget who we are. In the human journey, there is a quiet yet profoundly important moment. The moment when we begin to sense that we are living far away from ourselves. Not necessarily because of material lack, nor always due to great failure or loss, but because of a subtle feeling that despite having gone far and achieved much, we have not truly touched something essential within. This feeling is not loud, yet it is persistent, like a soft whisper calling from deep within consciousness. From a very young age, human beings learn to look outward to define who they are. We are given names, assigned roles, and taught how to become someone acceptable and worthy of love. Gradually, we begin to identify with these labels: profession, status, achievements, opinions, memories. We call this collection me and believe it to be our true self. According to the Buddha's teaching, this very identification is the root of ignorance. We fail to see the true nature of what we cling to. We mistake what is constantly changing for something stable. When these elements change or disappear, we feel disoriented, empty, even afraid, as though we ourselves are dissolving. Modern life intensifies this separation. We are swept into speed, constant information, endless comparison. We live more in reaction than in awareness. We move from one goal to another, believing that the next achievement will finally bring fulfillment. Yet each time a goal is reached, the sense of emptiness returns, more subtle, harder to name. In Buddhism, this is not seen as a personal failure, but as a universal condition arising from ignorance. We forget how to return to ourselves. We forget that there is a depth within us that does not depend on circumstances, that is not governed by success or failure. This depth does not need to be created, it only needs to be recognized. The inward journey does not begin by changing the world, but by stopping. Stopping to look directly at the inner life we often avoid. Stopping to listen to emotions that have long been ignored. Stopping to realize that most of the time we are living in thoughts about life rather than in the life that is actually unfolding. The Buddha did not teach people to become someone else in order to awaken. He taught them to look deeply into present experience to see the truth. When we observe the body, we see it changing. When we observe emotions, we see them arise and pass away. When we observe thoughts, we see them continuously forming and dissolving. None of these elements can be identified as a fixed self. Yet we habitually live as if there is a solid self controlling everything. We say, I think, I am sad, I succeed, without ever pausing to ask, who is the one thinking, feeling, succeeding? This question is not meant to produce an intellectual answer, but to open a direct seeing beyond words. The call inward often arises when the familiar structures of life begin to crack. It may appear when we are exhausted from striving, when a relationship ends, when a career loses meaning, or simply during a quiet evening when we realize we no longer know who we are beyond our roles. In Buddhism, such moments are not failures, they are opportunities. When external distractions can no longer cover inner emptiness, light begins to enter. We start asking deeper questions, not to find quick answers, but to understand ourselves more clearly. We begin to sense the difference between the self we believe ourselves to be and the living experience unfolding moment by moment. The journey to discover the true self is not a search for a higher or more refined ego. On the contrary, it is a process of gently removing layers of mistaken identification. Each time we release a definition of ourselves, space opens. In that space, there is no need to become anything, because life is already revealing itself. According to Buddha's teaching, the true self is not a separate entity. but awareness itself, the knowing that knows. It has no form, no name, and cannot be grasped by thought. Yet it is always present, silently witnessing every change of body and mind. When this dimension is recognized, we begin to live with less fear, because we no longer identify ourselves entirely with what is impermanent, with a conclusion, but with an invitation to return, to pause, and to begin listening deeply to oneself. This journey does not require abandoning life, but entering life fully. And from that very presence, the doorway to the true self quietly begins to open. Layers of identity, the masks we wear. When the inward call begins to be heard, the first thing we encounter is not the true self, but the layers of identity built over many years. These layers are like masks, formed to help us adapt, survive, and be accepted in the world. At first, they serve a purpose, but over time, we forget that we are wearing masks and begin to believe that the masks are who we truly are. We wear different masks in different situations. There is the mask of the successful person, always strong and in control. There is the mask of the agreeable one, always pleasing others. There is the mask of the silent bearer, carrying burdens without complaint. Each mask arises in response to a need, yet they all share one function: to conceal vulnerability and insecurity beneath the surface. In Buddhist teaching, these identities are not bad. They are psychological structures formed through conditions. There is no need to hate or destroy them. What matters is seeing their true nature. They are constructed, and because they are constructed, they can dissolve. When this is not seen, clinging arises, and clinging becomes suffering. One of the most powerful layers of identity is social role. We are someone's child, someone's parent, an employee, a leader, a success, or a failure. These roles shape how we see ourselves and how we believe others see us. When a role is affirmed, we feel worthy. When a role is threatened, we feel insecure, as if our very existence is being shaken. The Buddha taught that anything we can point to and say, "This is me," or "This is mine," cannot be the true self. Social roles come and go. They change with time, circumstance, and karma. If we place our entire sense of self upon them, we are building our home on unstable ground. Beyond roles, we also identify with emotions. When happy, we say, "I am happy." When sad, we say, "I am a sad person." Yet emotions are impermanent. They arise and fade like waves on the ocean. Without mindfulness, we are swept away by each wave, believing that every emotion reveals the truth of who we are. With mindfulness, we see emotions as passing phenomena. Thoughts become another subtle layer of identity. We believe the stories in the mind are me. We assume that the judging, comparing, worrying voice is our true nature. The Buddha taught that thoughts are conditioned phenomena. They have no fixed owner. When we sit quietly and observe, we see thoughts arise and disappear without our intervention. Some masks are formed from wounds. When we have been hurt, we learn to close off. When we have been rejected, we learn to protect ourselves through distance or control. These strategies helped us survive the past, but when they remain unexamined, they govern the present. Mindfulness allows us to see that these protective layers are no longer necessary in every situation. The inward journey does not demand that we remove all masks at once. That would be unrealistic. What is invited is honesty. We begin by noticing when we are performing a role. We sense the tension in the body required to maintain an image. we recognize the exhaustion of constantly proving who we are. This awareness alone is already a significant step. In Buddhism, non-self does not mean nothing exists. It means there is no fixed, independent, unchanging identity. Layers of identity may continue to function, but we no longer mistake them for our essence. We use them when appropriate and release them when they no longer serve. This flexibility brings lightness and freedom. As we loosen identification with these masks, a quiet space begins to open within. In this space, there is no need to be someone in order to exist. There is no need to prove worth. There is simply presence. And in this simple presence, a peace arises that does not depend on image or role. With the realization that discovering the true self is not a journey of addition, but of subtraction. Each identity seen and gently released removes a layer of covering. As these layers thin, what has always been present from the beginning, pure awareness, begins to be felt more clearly. The silent observer, discovering the one who knows. As layers of identity are gradually seen and loosened, a natural question begins to arisen, not as a thought, but as a quiet curiosity. If I am not my roles, not my emotions, not my thoughts, then who is aware of all of this? This question does not point outward, but turns directly toward lived experience itself. From here, the journey into the deeper dimension of awakening truly begins. In mindfulness practice, there is a subtle moment when we realize that while the body is changing, emotions are arising, and thoughts are passing, something remains constant: knowing. There is a silent presence witnessing all movements of body and mind, yet it is not carried away by them. In Buddhism, this is not a hidden soul or self, but the knowing function of mind, pure awareness. At first, we often mistake this observer for a more refined self. We imagine someone who is watching, but when we look closely, we find no entity behind the observation. There is only observing, only knowing. The Buddha did not teach us to search for an eternal subject, but to clearly see the process of knowing itself. When we sit quietly and observe the breath, we notice that the breath is known. When emotions arise, emotions are known. When thoughts appear, thoughts are known. But the knowing itself has no shape, no location, and cannot be grasped. It does not arise when objects arise, nor does it disappear when objects fade. It simply serves as the ground in which all experience appears. In daily life, we rarely notice this dimension because attention is constantly directed outward. We are absorbed in the content of experience and forget the context in which experience unfolds. Like watching a movie and becoming completely lost in the story, we forget the screen on which all images appear. With deep mindfulness, we begin to recognize that screen. The Buddha referred to this recognition as insight. It is not new information added to the mind, but direct seeing. When insight arises, belief is unnecessary. Convincing oneself is unnecessary. Truth reveals itself through experience. We see that all phenomena come and go, while knowing itself remains present. This does not mean that awareness is a subtle, permanent self. Buddhism is clear on this point. Awareness is not an ego in disguise. It has no ownership, no personal center. When we attempt to possess it, it becomes another object of clinging. Thus, practice is not about grasping awareness, but about releasing even the idea of an observer. As we rest in pure knowing, a subtle shift occurs in how we live. We no longer react as quickly to emotions or thoughts. A natural pause appears between stimulus and response. Within that pause lies freedom, the freedom to respond with understanding rather than habit. The presence of the silent observer brings a sense of spaciousness. We no longer feel trapped inside any particular mental state. Whether joy or sorrow, success or failure, there is an inner space wide enough to hold it all. This space is not an escape, but an allowing. Everything is permitted to be as it is. In Buddhism, this marks a crucial transition from identification with experience to awareness of experience. We no longer say, "I am angry," but see, anger is present. We no longer say, "I am afraid," but see, fear is arising. This shift in language reflects a deep transformation in perception. As awareness becomes more stable, trust in it naturally grows. Not conceptual trust, but experiential confidence. We see that regardless of life's fluctuations, there is an inner ground that remains unshaken. This ground is not an idea, but living awareness itself. This path does not lead away from life, but deeper into it. Freed from entanglement in thought and emotion, we can be more fully present with others. We listen without defense, speak without ego-driven urgency, and act with greater clarity. With the recognition that the true self is not something to be found elsewhere, it is already present as the knowing that knows. When we pause, release our stories about who we are, and rest in this simple awareness, we begin to live from an entirely different depth. From that depth, the path toward inner freedom quietly unfolds. Impermanence and emptiness, the self that cannot be found. As we begin to rest in silent knowing, a deeper insight gradually reveals itself. Not only are roles, emotions, and thoughts impermanent, but the very self we once believed in cannot be found as a fixed entity. The Buddha referred to this realization as insight into impermanence and emptiness. These are not abstract concepts, but truths that can be directly experienced when we look deeply into body and mind with mindfulness. Impermanence is not merely the external change of circumstances. It is the nature of all phenomena. This body is changing at the cellular level. Emotions arise and fade. Thoughts come and go. Even subtle states such as awareness do not exist as fixed objects. When this is truly seen, the idea of a solid, enduring self begins to loosen. In Buddhism, emptiness does not mean that nothing exists. It means that nothing exists independently, inherently, or unchangingly. All phenomena arise dependent on conditions. What we call self is merely a temporary convergence of body, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. When conditions change, the convergence changes. There is no separate self standing outside this process to own or control it. At first, this insight may evoke unease. We are accustomed to clinging to something solid for security. When we see that there is no fixed self to hold on to, it can feel disorienting. But if we remain with this insight through mindfulness and compassion, we discover that releasing the notion of self brings profound relief. The Buddha did not teach impermanence and emptiness to lead beings into nihilism or despair. He taught them to liberate. When we no longer have to defend a fixed identity, we become freer in how we live. We no longer need to be right, strong, or successful in order to exist. Existence no longer depends on becoming someone. Contemplating impermanence deepens our contact with the present moment. When we know that this moment will never return, we naturally cherish it. We listen more deeply, love more sincerely, and live more mindfully. Impermanence does not remove meaning from life. It makes every moment precious. Emptiness allows us to see that the boundaries we draw between self and other are not as solid as we once believed. When we look deeply, we see life expressing itself through countless forms, yet not divided. From this understanding, compassion naturally arises. Others are no longer perceived as separate entities, but as expressions of the same living process. As the self ceases to occupy the center, many inner conflicts begin to settle. We no longer need to compare, defend, or prove ourselves. Strong reactions gradually give way to clear observation. Emotions arise, but they are no longer experienced as threats to identity. In daily life, insight into impermanence and emptiness helps us release what once caused pressure. Success comes and goes. Failure comes and goes. Praise and blame also come and go. When we no longer build identity upon these conditions, the mind becomes steadier. We live with flexibility rather than rigidity. The understanding that there is no fixed self does not make us indifferent or irresponsible. On the contrary, it purifies our actions. When behavior is no longer driven by ego, it arises from clarity and genuine care. Responsibility is no longer rooted in fear or obligation, but in deep connection with life. The Buddha taught that wisdom is not something to be accumulated, but something to be lived. When impermanence and emptiness are seen moment by moment, life becomes a flow of awareness. We stop seeking certainty in what is inherently fragile. We learn to dwell within uncertainty with a steady heart, with the realization that the true self cannot be found as an object. Anything that can be grasped, defined, or described is not it. When searching ceases and experience is allowed to reveal itself, we touch a freedom not grounded in identity. From that freedom, the path of mindful living unfolds naturally. Letting go of the false self, freedom beyond identity. As insight into impermanence and emptiness deepens, a natural movement begins to unfold within the mind. Letting go. Letting go here is not a forced act or a mental decision, but the result of clear seeing. When we truly see that what we have been clinging to does not exist in the way we once believed, clinging loosens on its own. This is the moment when the false self begins to lose its grip. The false self is not an enemy to be destroyed. It is a structure formed to help us survive in an uncertain world. But when it continues to operate unconsciously, it becomes a burden. We must constantly protect our self-image, prove our worth, and control how others perceive us. Mindfulness allows us to recognize this quiet exhaustion. Letting go of the false self begins with small moments. We release the need to be right in every argument. We loosen the craving for immediate validation. We soften the reflex to defend ourselves when old fears are touched. Each act of letting go creates a bit more inner space, and in that space, a lightness emerges that was previously rare. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from clinging. When we cling to an image of ourselves, we suffer whenever that image is threatened. When we cling to a story about our life, we fear whenever the story unfolds differently than expected. Letting go does not remove direction from our lives. It frees us from being imprisoned by old narratives. In this process, mindfulness serves as a faithful companion. It helps us notice the moment the ego attempts to take control. It allows us to pause before reacting habitually. That pause, however brief, is enough to open a new choice, to act not from ego, but from understanding. As letting go gradually unfolds, a quiet sense of freedom is tasted. This freedom is not dramatic or loud. It is subtle and gentle. It is the freedom of no longer having to perform, freedom to be, without defining who one is. In this freedom, there is no longer the pressure to become an idealized version of oneself. Letting go of the false self also transforms how we relate to others. Without the need to protect personal identity, we can listen more deeply. We do not need to win every conversation. We can admit mistakes without feeling diminished. Relationships become more authentic when they are no longer filtered through self-assertion. In Buddhism, letting go does not mean passivity or irresponsibility. When ego no longer dominates, action becomes purer. We work not to prove ourselves, but to contribute. We help not to be seen, but because of a natural connection with others' suffering. As motivation changes, so does the quality of action. At times, letting go is accompanied by a sense of loss. We may feel as if something familiar is being taken away. But if we stay with this feeling mindfully, we discover that what is dissolving is not our true being, but the illusion of it. As illusion fades, life becomes more spacious, no longer confined by old patterns. Letting go is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process. Each day, the ego finds new ways to reassert itself in subtler forms. And each day, we are given another opportunity to see, smile, and release a little more. This path requires no haste, only patience and compassion toward ourselves. As the false self is gradually released, a profound simplicity enters life. We no longer live two lives, one outward and one inside the mind. We live a single life, direct and authentic. In that simplicity, the mind becomes steadier and more at ease, with the realization that inner freedom does not come from constructing a better self, but from courageously letting go of what is no longer needed. When the self is no longer at the center, life itself becomes the guide. And in that guidance, we begin to live from a place that is quiet, real, and free. Living from the true self, awakening in everyday life. As the false self gradually loosens and awareness becomes a familiar ground of living, a question no longer needs to be asked. What is the true self? The question naturally dissolves because life is now being experienced directly, beyond concepts. The true self is no longer sought as an object. Life is lived from that depth itself. Living from the true self does not mean withdrawing from the world or retreating into silence. On the contrary, it is full presence within ordinary life. We continue to walk, work, speak, relate, and love, but without being driven by the need to assert or protect an identity. Actions become simpler and more natural because they no longer arise from inner lack. In the light of awareness, ordinary activities take on a different quality. We wash dishes knowing we are washing dishes. We walk and feel the contact of the ground beneath our feet. We listen without rehearsing a response. Life is no longer divided into important and unimportant moments. Every moment becomes a place where awakening can express itself. The Buddha taught that awakening is not a special state apart from life, but the ending of ignorance in each action. When we live from the true self, ignorance no longer governs perception and reaction. Emotions are seen as they arise, but they do not carry us away. Thoughts appear and disappear, but they are no longer taken as commands to follow. One clear sign of living from the true self is steadiness. This steadiness is not rigidity, but flexibility. When conditions change, we adapt without losing ourselves. When difficulty arises, we remain present rather than immediately seeking escape. This steadiness comes from no longer grounding identity in what is fragile. Living from the true self also brings gentleness. When the ego no longer needs defense, the heart softens. We can see others suffering without judgment. We can recognize our own limitations without self-blame. Compassion becomes not a moral ideal, but a natural response of an undivided mind. In relationships, awareness shows itself as presence. We are there when others need us, not to fix or control, but to listen. We speak when speech is appropriate, and remain silent when silence serves. Relationships cease to be arenas for ego affirmation and become spaces where life encounters itself through different forms. Living from the true self does not make life perfect. Pain, loss, and imperfection remain. What changes is our relationship to them. We allow sadness without despair. We allow mistakes without losing our sense of worth. Within this allowing, a gentle wisdom matures. The Buddha did not promise that awakening would eliminate all difficulties. He taught that when identification with self ends, difficulties lose their destructive power. We experience suffering, but we are no longer defined by it. We move through adversity with clarity, rather than being swept away by unconscious reaction. As awareness permeates life, the boundary between practice and living dissolves. Every situation becomes an opportunity to return. Every interaction becomes a mirror reflecting our level of presence. There is no need to seek a special place to practice. Life itself becomes the path, and each moment the teaching. Ultimately, living from the true self is not the attainment of a permanent state. It is a continual returning. We forget and remember. We wander and come back. Each return renews awareness. The path has no final endpoint because it is life itself unfolding. With a declaration, but with a knowing silence. In that silence, the question, "Who am I?" no longer arises because life answers through presence itself. The inward journey is complete in the sense that nothing more needs to be sought. Yet it has just begun, in the sense that each moment offers a fresh opportunity to live with greater awareness, depth, and freedom.